At the beginning of the 19th century, Bristol was the second city of England, and it was natural for the merchants of the city to consider, if not require, a railway to link them to the capital London. Therefore, an Act of Parliament in 1835 to construct a railway between the two cities was passed, and the Great Western Railway was born. The grand station of Temple Meads was built and progressively enlarged to take in the Bristol and Gloucester and Bristol and Exeter railways. Viewed from Bath Road, 7022 Hereford Castle departs for Weston-super-Mare on the 28th of August 1964. A South Wales link to Bristol using ferries across the Severn opened in 1863, and this line came into the city via Filton and its 1 in 75 bank. 5026 Criccieth Castle descends into the city, while a Black 5 restarts from Stapleton Road, where banking assistance was obtained. Passenger trains could stop here for South Wales connections and had a very difficult restart on the incline. Bristol was served by a diesel Pullman train from 1960 until 1973. The Pullman units were based at Bristol. The up 0815 Temple Meads to Paddington service passes Bristol East Depot. Steam engines served Avonmouth docks, and the city centre docks at Wapping saw a preserved example in the 1980s. Here, Henbury, of local Peckett manufacture, reflects nicely on the still waters of the new cut. Up to 1965, summer Saturday holiday trains from the north to the west of England could be seen arriving behind steam. This is 70,045 Lord Roallan on the 26th of June. Having handed over to diesel traction, she will run back to Barrow Road Shed for servicing. At the west end of Temple Meads, Wolverhampton Oxley Sheds 45186 has arrived along number 5 down platform. As it comes to a stand, 2 North British diesel hydraulic locomotives begin their move to take over the train. A few minutes later, Lord Roallan again, handing over this time to a high-mech diesel. As Lord Roallan reverses along the through roads between numbers 8 and 9 platforms, it appears the engine has a leaking gland on the smokebox barrel, where the external rodding passes through to activate its multiple valve regulator in the superheater header. One notices the leak as the driver applies some steam. These valves were to provide more sensitive control than the conventional slide-type regulators. 44831 of Rugby Shed is commendably clean as it runs back to Barrow Road Shed off another West Country bound Holiday Express. As the evening sun goes down on the 27th of August 1964, Hereford Castle comes under Bath Road Bridge on a train from Weston-super-Mare to Swindon. .7022 again, this time running light engine to Weston-super-Mare at Bedminster. Bedminster Victoria Park afforded excellent views of the comings and goings on the main line west of Temple Meads. The young children watch as 7022 goes on her way before a pannier tank brings a transfer freight from West Depot past the park. One of Collett's 280s, based on Churchwood's design of 1903, is running back to St Philip's Marsh Depot, having worked a freight to West Depot near Parsons Street. The background to this view is of Pile Hill Goods Depot. This depot dated from Bristol and Exeter railway days of the 1840s. It concentrated on freight from Australia and the Americas, arriving from Avonmouth docks, like grain and flour. 92111 passes with a freight for West Depot. .6804 Brockington Grange has empty stock to Malagoville carriage sidings. .6997 Bryn Iver Hall is on a down freight. Pile Hill Goods Yard box can be seen in the yards, controlling movements out of the yards. In the distance are the buildings of W.D.&H.O. Will's Tobacco Factory. 6997 is approaching Bedminster Station Box. Finally at Bedminster, 7903 Foremark Hall, later to be reserved via Woodhams of Barry, heads west on a partially fitted freight. Passing West Depot yards at Parsons Street Junction on the 9th of May 1964 is 7029 Cluncastle in the hands of Lara driver Harry Roach. This was a non-stop run from Plymouth, the engine achieving 97 miles per hour after Wellington Bank and arriving at Temple Meads 10 minutes early. Parsons Street Junction gave access to the Portishead branch, opened in 1867, running along the west bank of the River Avon. On the 8th of August 1964, a month before closure of Clifton Bridge Station, Class 5 73001 arrives on a regular summer Saturday train for Portishead with Southern Regions stock, which started its journey from Waterloo. The Avon Gorge was crossed by Brunel's magnificent suspension bridge, opened in 1864, 5 years after the great engineer's death. A junction off the Portishead line at Ashton led onto the City Docks branch to Wapping Wharf. With restrictions on all but the heaviest engines, British Railways locomotives once worked along these lines, although pannier tanks were the norm. The Port of Bristol Authority had its own fleet of locomotives for working at Avonmouth and Portishead. One was S9 Henbury and is seen crossing Ashton Swing Bridge in 1981. S9 is assisting ex-Port of Bristol Authority No. 41, a Rolls-Royce Sentinel diesel product of 1965, which had helped to displace Henbury at Avonmouth 16 years before. A large house coal concentration depot existed at Wapping Wharf, and it was shunted by a diesel. When the diesel was undergoing overhaul in October 1981, preserved Henbury was called on to do the work. This is on one of those occasions, sporting the livery of the Western Fuel Company. She was a local product from the Peckett Company, who built engines at the Atlas Engine Works in the suburb of St George, Bristol. She emerged from their works in 1937. In the background is a Fairbairn steam crane built by Stotherton Pitt of Bath in 1875. It had a 35-ton lift. The other bigger cranes were also built by Stotherton Pitt. On a perfect 16th of October day in 1981, the empty coal wagons are returned to Ashton sidings down the new cut, finally disappearing under Cumberland Road footbridge. The engine had been passed by British Railways to do this work for 3 weeks. On the 19th of October she was given permission to run to Bath Road Shed for turning. Here she proudly steams through Parsons Street Station. Big surprise for the HST passengers as Henbury lifts her safety valves as if to say steam still has a place on the railways of Bristol. Returning to the main line at South Liberty Junction, which was on the approach to West Depot, Hereford Castle returns from West-sur-Mer on an excursion from Swindon. It is the 28th of August 1964 and 70:22 glints in the evening sun. This is at Bristol West, and 7029 Clun Castle is running under the Bath Road Bridge. Her SLS Special is bound for Birmingham and will reverse at Temple Meads. .7029 reverses over Pile Hill Junction and takes the Bristol avoiding line via St Philip's Marsh and North Somerset Junction to arrive at the north end of Temple Meads, the right way round for its onward journey. We now move to Bath Road Shed, home of the express locomotives to and from Bristol over the years. This is May the 9th, 1964, with 5054 Earl of Ducie waiting to take over from 7029 on the Great Western Tour, which was trying to get 100 miles per hour out of a castle. 7032 Denbigh Castle was on standby. The shed stood on the site of the original Bristol and Exeter depot of 1850. It was rebuilt in 1934 to a 10-road running shed and 3-road repair shop. The shed closed to steam on the 12th of September 1960 and rebuilt as a diesel depot of 6 roads, opening again in June 1962. In this form it is seen here with steam. A pannier is hauling 7924 Thornycroft Hall off the still extant turntable. It is October 1965 and the last castle, Clun Castle, is still in service. Behind her is 6859 Useley Grange, clean but about to be withdrawn from Severn Tunnel Junction shed. This occasion is in preparation for an open day at the depot on the 23rd of October 1965. Fireman Mike Jeffries is seen closing Clun Castle's smokebox door after cleaning out the smokebox jar. It is now 6859's turn to go to the 65-foot turntable. At the east end of Temple Meads, a pannier runs by on the high-level goods lines, which also once ran down to the Bristol Harbour lines until closure in 1964. 92238 runs slowly through the station with a freight from West Depot to the Midlands Westerly yards. .4993 Dalton Hall leaves platform 7 on the 7 p.m. stopping service to Weymouth via Bath and Westbury. To follow the main line to Bath, we are privileged to travel in the cab of the Blue Pullman, courtesy of Bath road driver Ron Worden. Temple Meads had electric signalling from 1935, but in 1970 this was replaced by multiple aspect signalling seen on signal B39 as we depart on the up London, Midland and South Wales line. At At Bristol East, we cross over the up relief to gain the up main, indicated by the feathers on the gantry. A High McDiesel passes East Depot on the up empty vans from Malago Vale to Old Oak Common, London in the early 1970s. After the cutting, formerly Bristol No. 1 tunnel is St Anne's Park. 5955 Garth Hall was fitted for oil firing in 1946 for a couple of years, the first hall so equipped, of 11 halls in total. St Anne's Park was opened in 1898. It closed in January 1970. 1013, County of Dorset, heads east on the 13th of July 1964. A castle heads for Bath Spa at Somerdale near Keynsham. Near here at Keynsham was the Fry's chocolate factory. Running west through Bath Spa is the Western Region's Farewell to Steam special of November 1965. 7029 roars across the 65-arch viaduct, carrying the line across the city. Ten months earlier, the same engine heads for Bristol near Keynsham. And arrival back at Temple Meads with 6827 Lanfreckard range. A standard Class 3 tank leaves with empty coaching stock to Lawrence Hill carriage sidings. Another route out of Bristol was to the Midlands. The Bristol and Gloucester Railway was invited by the GWR to use Temple Mead Station in 1844, but a year later this company amalgamated with the Birmingham and Gloucester and eventually absorbed by the Midland. Preparing its train for Birmingham is Patriot 45530 Sir Frank Ree in 1964. She is picking up an ex-LNER bogie parcels van in number 12 platform. LNER B1s could be seen on trains to the northeast, like Bradford and Leeds. This is 61394 of Rotherham Canklow Depot. For many years before this, it was allocated to Top Shed, King's Cross. Departing number 9 platform for Gloucester is Saltleys 44812. The train crosses over to the Up Midland lines to take the junction for Gloucester at Bristol East Box. (48660) was from Bath Green Park. She runs light towards Barrow Road Shed. This Midland roundhouse shed came under Western Region control from 1958 and had an allocation of both Midland and Western Region engines after Bath Road and St Philip's Marsh sheds closed. A 4F060 runs light engine towards Temple Meads. .73014 is being prepared for work in the shed yard. Its home shed was Banbury. The shed site was cramped, but unlike the western sheds, did boast a modern mechanical kohler and ash disposal plant. It was a main depot for the area, covering Gloucester, Bath, Templecombe and Highbridge. 45040 moves forward under the road bridge known locally as 13 Arches. This bridge crossed the main line, local yard, goods yard and St Philip's carriage sidings. The date is the 21st of August 1965 and 45040 is being serviced after having arrived at Bristol that morning on the 6:55 Wolverhampton train. 73014 takes a fill of water before going down to Temple Meads to work a West Country train forward to Wolverhampton with through coaches from Minehead. The train had arrived at Bristol with 14 coaches. Thankfully for the standard 5, 4 were detached before she storms past the shed in fine style to tackle the 1 in 69 of Fishponds Bank. On the 17th of October 1965, the shed played host to 2 Western tank engines en route to preservation on the Dart Valley Railway, 6435 and 1420. Carrying number and nameplates of Windsor Castle, this was really Bristol Castle, the exchange done in 1952 to work the funeral train of King George VI. Numbered 4082, she storms around the curve from Bristol East, passing engine shed box with a summer Saturday train from the West Country. The banking engine, if required to assist trains on Fishponds Bank, stands in the spur. It is the 8th of August 1964 and the following train, hauled by 5955 Garth Hall, climbs the bank at Fishponds, thankful of the banker 82038. Down the bank comes Jubilee 45658 Keys, shedded at Leeds Holbeck for her entire life. A further mile leads to Kingswood Junction. Just south of the junction, a 4F runs Tenderfirst northwards. The incline was also known as Whitehall Bank. .70,045 is returning past Kingswood Junction's 24-lever box after turning on the Mangotsfield Triangle. The junction was where the Midlands Clifton Extension line branched off for Avonmouth. This closed in 1965. The signal post guarding the junction is now armless as 7029 Cluncastle climbs on an enthusiast special on the 17th of October 1965. The same engine, but 9 months previously, continues the climb to Fishponds on the returning SLS Special to Birmingham. Three days later, the 27th of January 1965, there was snow in the air. A Hawksworth pannier comes up the bank with a trip freight to Westerly Yards. An 8F with a very small payload. The overnight Newcastle to Bristol TPO mail train required turning on the Mangotsfield Triangle. A 4F and standard class 3 tank bring the train towards Fishponds. This manoeuvre ceased after April 1965, when the train started using the main through platforms at Temple Meads and was serviced at Malago instead of St Philip's. About 30 minutes later, the returning train descends at Kingswood Junction towards Bristol St Philip's carriage sidings near Barrow Road. A Gloucester to Bristol stopper descends the incline. Traffic for Bath Green Park on the Somerset and Dorset line came this way. Viewed from the west side, north of Kingswood, a standard Class 3 tank passes for Bath with southern stop. A castle is going well without assistance on 10 coaches with a summer Saturday train for the northeastern region. Viewed from rail level, below the bridge the previous views were taken from, 70,045 Lord Roallan is climbing at Kingswood Junction on the 26th of June 1965. At this time she was allocated to Wolverhampton Oxley Shed. In January 1970 this main line was closed. It is now pedal powered, in use as a cycle path. Five miles out of Bristol is Mangotsfield. We are leaving the station behind rebuilt Patriot Sir Frank Ree. Approaching Mangotsfield North Junction Box and the original station at Shortwood, closed in 1869. On the left are the up carriage yards bordering Lover's Lane. Then under the bridge carrying the B4465 road and the location of the local hostelry, the Bridge Inn. Viewed from the northwest side of the triangle, on the 22nd of August 1964, Derby's 44659 catches the glint while passing Carson's Chocolate Factory, situated in the middle of the triangle. Following behind, 6848 Toddington Grange. Earlier in the day, Barrow Road 73024 is bringing the Newcastle-Bristol TPO for turning on the triangle. Coming along the Bristol line are down freight. It was up to Derby, of course, headed by 45670, Howard of Effingham. .9626 for years a Bristol engine is well known to Terry Nichols, as must be the crew, as she whistles a greeting. Having delivered the parcels van, she returns in a hurry back to Barrow Road. 48525 is a recent transfer from Llanelli to Bath Green Park Shed. She is seen heading for Bristol with a freight from Westerly Yard and then returns with the brake van. F44534 with another transfer freight from Westerly to Bristol. She will cross the footpath from the middle of the triangle to Lover's Lane. On Easter Sunday, the 29th of April 1964, 45682 Trafalgar heads for Bristol off the curve from Mansfield North on a returning Bourneville-Cadbury trade excursion to Newton Abbot, which she had worked to and from Bristol. At the same spot on the 13th of August, Gloucester Horton Roadshed had supplied Fringford Manor for a stopper to Bristol Temple Meads. For F43924 is bound for Westerly Yards with a relief crew for the yard pilot. She would be preserved later, in fact the first inmate of Woodham Scrapyard to escape and see service on the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway. Viewed from the coal yard on the Bath line, she is seen returning to Barrow Road, manned by the morning yard pilot crew, who will be booking off at Barrow Road. From the Bath direction comes S&D 280-53807 on the 6:27 p.m. Bath to Westerly freight. She would visit Bristol later on the 8:45 p.m. freight to St Phillips. She was the last of her class in service. We saw pannier tank 6435 earlier at Barrow Road Shed. This is how she got there, working as pilot to Clun Castle on a rail tour from Gloucester, which originated at Birmingham. The pair passed Mansfield North Junction. It was all too much for Auto Tank 1420. She follows behind, light engine. Leaving Carson's Bridge northbound is Jubilee 45675 Hardy. Passing under Pomfrey Hill Bridge is 6819 Hynham Grange en route for Bath Green Park on a pigeon special. Looking the other way, we see 44829 is southbound for Bristol on a semi-fast. A Jubilee takes us north again from Mansfield. 6 miles north near Rangeworthy, south of Whitmore Tunnel, was an ideal spot for viewing the traffic on the Midland Main Line. It was still quite busy in 1964, as these scenes show. A southbound train with a standard 5 passes a castle at Rangeworthy. A 4F hurries along on a local stopper for Gloucester. A black 5 fitted with a double chimney, one of only 8 in the class so fitted. The line came under Western Region Control from 1958, so their engines were to be seen in plenty. 4993 heads south, the cattle wagons correctly marshalled behind the tender. These views were all taken on the 25th of July 1964. 6924 Grantley Hall passes on a northbound express before a black 5 heads for Bristol on a semi-fast. Presumably the fireman too idle to put the lamp on the top bracket. Or perhaps it was broken. Finally at this location, 7023 Penrice Castle, BR built in June 1949, heads for Whitmore Tunnel. Just north of Whitmore Station on the 7th of August 1965. This would be the last summer of steam on this route. 5932 Hayden Hall, 2 months before her withdrawal from Barrow Road, heads a returning Holiday Express northwards. Worcester's 75025 heads 30 wagons for Bristol. Another Oxley engine, 45186, works a West Country to the Midlands Express. Three Britannias were transferred to Oxley in June 1965 for 3 months to work the West Country holiday trains to Bristol. We have seen 70,045. This is 70,053 Moray Firth. As if to show the Great Western did it better, 6999 Capel Dewey Hall takes 11 coaches north. This Black 5, with safety valves lifted, manages 9 very well. Of course, it's downhill here anyway. Finally on the Midland Line out of Bristol, 7029 passes Wickwar on the 27th of November 1965. The tower of the parish church looks down on the then closed station, one of many intermediate stations on the route to Gloucester, which closed on the 4th of January 1965. Back at Temple Meads, we will follow the South Wales and London route via Badminton as far as the Severn Tunnel. A Grange departing starts our journey. This route diverged from the main line via Bath to Dr. Day's Bridge Junction. Dr. Day was the resident doctor at a cotton mill at Barton Hill in 1846. He treated an outbreak of cholera at Bristol in 1848. The South Wales line ran past his house, and when, in 1886, the loop from North Somerset Junction was opened, the junction was called after him. A Hawksworth pannier tank brings a freight train round the 1886 curve from North Somerset Junction. An 8F, working a train from Portishead, rounds the curve at Dr. Day's. The carriage sidings are on the right of the picture. The 8F has a Fowler design small tender and is being checked just before the 1 in 100 climb to Lawrence Hill. En route from the southern region to a scrapyard in South Wales are 4 condemned engines in a freight train, their rods taken off and being hauled as a Class 8 unfitted train. First station from Dr. Day's was Lawrence Hill. A Hymek works south on 1072, a Cardiff to Portsmouth train passing under the Midland Line to Mangotsfield out of Bristol. After 1.5 miles, trains pass Stapleton Road and climb the 1 in 75 for just over 2 miles to Horfield. 7919 Runter Hall climbs to Narroways Hill Junction on a parcels train. The loco is priming badly with a full boiler, the excess roaring from the safety valves whose cover has gone missing, and so have the nameplates. The cylinder cocks are open to avoid damage to the cylinders and covers. 6994 Maggrave Hall runs off the Avonmouth line, which connects with the Clifton extension line from Kingswood Junction. Given the right of way, she runs down to Bristol, passing Stapleton Road Gasworks. On the 8th of August 1964, Barrow Road's Dalton Hall comes down from Ashley Hill, bound for Temple Meads with a West Country train from the northwest via Hereford and the Severn Tunnel. Following is 5026 Criccieth Castle. 45273 of Leeds Holbeck has stopped at Stapleton Road on a returning West Country train for a banker to attach. Bound for the Midland region via Stoke Gifford and Westerly, this enables London Midland drivers to maintain a knowledge of this route and save on using Western Pilotman. With a difficult restart on the 1 in 75, most trains receive banking assistance from Stapleton Road. At Ashley Hill, just past Narroways Hill Junction, where the previous scenes were filmed, B1 61315 from Canclo Shed appears on a similar working from the West Country. The train has 6999 Capildewey Hall as banker. Like the previous train, the rear coach is a chocolate and cream liveried restaurant car. The date is the 25th of July, 1964. Following on the relief line for South Wales is 6911 Holker Hall, with a background of St Werburgh's Church. Making a cautious descent to Narroways, a pannier tank and towed brake van at Ashley Hill. A Swindon-built three-car cross-country DMU is on a Cardiff service, passing under the Midland line from Kingswood Junction. The 5th of May 1973 saw a farewell to the Blue Pullman service. Climbing at Ashley Hill, the unit is en route to Swansea. One of Oxley's Brits takes 10 mixed coaches up the hill, while a High-Mech drifts down with a freight from South Wales. We have seen engines from 3 regions so far. To complete the quartet, 34086-219 Squadron is destined for Cardiff on a Southampton to Tenby troop special on the 3rd of July 1965. On the 7th of August, 34052 Lord Dowding has a similar working. The footpath leads to Ashley Hill Station and the public are implored not to cross the railway. A Hall and Standard 5 disappear towards Narroways. The 9th of May special with Earl of Ducie climbs at 42 miles per hour, with Bath Road driver Higson in charge, en route non-stop to Paddington through Ashley Hill Station. There were 4 tracks from Stapleton Road to Filton Junction. This Black 5 has come from the Midlands and is on the two tracks opened in 1933. The two original tracks nearest the camera became the relief lines, but if possible South Wales trains use these two to avoid crossing over at Filton Junction. On the 11th of July 1964, and 3 months from withdrawal, 5000 Launceston Castle of 1926 build passes Ashley Hill. A pannier takes a mixed rake of wagons to Stoke Gifford Yards, climbing Filton Bank past Ashley Hill Box. An evening van train is headed by 6815 Frilford Grange. The 1 in 75 gradient continues through Horfield. A hall runs back to Bristol, possibly from banking duties. Halfway between Ashley Hill and Horfield, there has been an overnight snowfall to greet 4F 43924 running tender first to Stoke Gifford Yards. She passes under Lockleys footbridge. Following is a sister engine with more work to do than the previous one. The crew will have their overcoats on, running tender first to the north. A pilot engine from Stoke Gifford goes back to a warm shed at Barrow Road. Five miles out of Temple Meads, 6829 Birmingham Grange is on level track, taking the London route via Badminton, which leads to Stoke Gifford Yards. Stoke Gifford Yards are beyond the bridge. Stanier Mogul 42957 of Oxley is passing the yard shunting net on its way to Yate, where she will gain the Midland line to Gloucester. From the Swindon direction comes 5056 Earl of Paris. This route was built in 1903 to enable South Wales traffic to run to London, avoiding Bristol. The 30-mile cut-off from Patchway to Wootton Bassett shortened the journey by 10 miles. At the same time, the large yard at Stoke Gifford was opened, and here a Black 5 heads out of the evening sun north with oil tanks from Avonmouth. There were 14 roads in the up yard and 10 in the down. With the closure of the Midland Yard at Westerly in February 1965, most of that traffic was transferred to Stoke Gifford. A Black 5 comes opposite the signal box to take water. However, Stoke Gifford itself closed in October 1971. The site was cleared and a new station and car park opened on the 1st of May 1972 called Bristol Parkway. The Blue Pullman passes through the new station on its farewell tour. On the South Wales Main Line, west of Parkway, is Patchway, and the Severn-Tunnel banker 4144 is returning to Severn-Tunnel Junction. Patchway Station replaced Patchway and Stoke Gifford Station a quarter of a mile to the north in 1908. Freight trains requiring a path westward through the tunnel were often held here, and 6991 Acton Burnell Hall is no exception. The train is backed into the siding behind the down platform to await its turn along the main line. It is the 28th of November 1964. 6991 sets off towards Pilning. At this point the up and down lines diverge. 6991 is on the down line, which was the original track bed of the single line to New Passage with its ferry across the Severn before the tunnel was built. This line descends into the Patchway tunnels. On the down line it is in fact two tunnels, the first 3/4 of a mile long, which is immediately followed by another short tunnel. The grades on this line is downwards at 1 in 80, 1 in 90 and 1 in 68. Wagon brakes would be pinned down at Patchway Station or the stopboard before the tunnel and released at Pilning. This haul is approaching the stopboard under the A38 road bridge to pin down brakes. Storming up the 1 in 100 grade on the up line is a Hall class engine with a 4100 class as banker. This tunnel was built when the Severn Tunnel was opened in 1886 and double track installed all the way to Narroways. The lower level gave a slightly easier grade for the heavier trains in the up direction. Viewed at Cattybrook, the west end of Patchway Tunnel, a 280 enters the up bore. The banking engine, which had come from Severn Tunnel Junction assisting at the front, has detached at Pilning and gone to the rear. It will then bank the train to Patchway or Stoke Gifford. Having dropped off its train, the banker runs back to Pilning at Cattybrook. A Brush Type 4 locomotive D1604, later to become 47476 and named Night Mail, climbs towards Patchway up tunnel and past Cattybrook Brickworks. The climb out of the Severn Tunnel to Pilning was at 1 in 100. Collett's 3864 of Neathshed has a 4100 class to assist on this very heavy haul of loaded South Wales coal. .4132 runs back to its home shed of Severn Tunnel Junction. It is April 1964 and in 2 months she would be withdrawn. The Severn Tunnel was the longest on a main line in Britain at 4 miles 628 yards. Earlier we saw Bullied 219 Squadron climbing Filton Bank. With no return working, she returns from Cardiff light engine. But the tunnel was a truly Great Western achievement, even though it took nearly 13 years to build. And a truly famous Great Western engine, 4079 Pendennis Castle, is seen climbing out of it on the 26th of April 1964. The Western diesel hydraulics came on the scene in 1961 and started to take over from steam traction all over the Western region. The steam locomotive was being withdrawn all over the country as well, and the route through Bristol to South Wales saw many movements of the dead iron horses. 34084 253 Squadron is hauling dead locos through Temple Meads in April 1965. She would be withdrawn 6 months later, although the Jubilee Galatea in this cavalcade would be saved. Steam finished at Bristol in late 1965. An open day at Bath Road Diesel Depot in October 1966 did attract some steam. 30,064 was passing through Bristol from Meldon Quarry, Devon to the southern region. These American-built tank engines were imported during the war and some came through Avonmouth docks and so in fact were not really strangers to the Bristol scene. And looking just like a scene from Bristol's past, 7029 Clun Castle and 7808 Cookham Manor, by now in private hands, were also invited to the open day in 1966. The following year, October 1967, 7808 Crookham Manor was again in attendance. She normally resided at the Doughty premises at Ashchurch, Gloucestershire. This preservation centre also housed 46201 Princess Elizabeth, which also visited Bath Road in Steam. She was at this time in her withdrawn livery of Brunswick Green. Her return to Ashchurch is seen near Kingswood Junction as she climbs the bank, and there is a friendly wave from the footplate by Divisional Mechanical Locomotive Inspector Reg Patton. The Great Western Railway was born in the minds of Bristol men in 1833. The sun has finally set on this record of the railways around Bristol. Hereford Castle signs off, passing East Depot for Swindon. These were the glorious days.